Well, what an amazing round of ANZ Championship we have just seen. In fact, almost the most incredible round we've seen. So many really tight matches, some upsets, and of course, the much talked about Mystics chairlift that we saw when they took on the Vixens. So heaps to talk about this week as I say hello and welcome to Centre Pass, the official video podcast of the ANZ Championship. I'm Sherelle McMahon, standing in for Dan Ryan today, and joining me at the desk is the head coach of the Australian Netball Diamonds, Lisa Alexander. Lisa, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Sherelle. It's been a really exciting, interesting and eventful round 8.
It certainly has. And what have you made of this kind of first half of the season now that we've just been through it?
Well, I think unpredictability is the key word, definitely. And I've really enjoyed it. I think each match tells you that you're going to have a contest, and it's who turns up on the day in the right mental framework.
That's exactly right. So let's check out all the scores from round 8 of the ANZ Championship. We saw the Magic with a comfortable win over the Tactics, 65-42. The Mystics in the tight one, and of course again the excitement of the chairlift there in Melbourne, 49 over the Vixens, 45. The Swifts, 52, defeating the Fever, 47. Just one goal separating the Firebirds and the Steel in Dunedin down there, 61-60. And the Pulse, of course, with a 1-goal win over the Thunderbirds, 47-46. So, Lisa, some amazing matches that we saw. First of all, let's talk about the Mystics versus the Vixens. This was an incredibly important match for the Vixens. They started the season with 6 wins on the board in a row, went up to Sydney and had their first loss of the season. So it was a big game for them in a number of ways.
Oh, it certainly was. And it was a big game for the Mystics as well. They definitely had to show that they're the real deal this year, and I think they did. I think they were very disciplined. It was a really controlled team performance from the Mystics. So I think Debbie Fuller would be very happy with that, and she also put out a very settled lineup as well.
Yeah, and obviously we need to talk about the chairlift. Everyone's been talking about it. It's been our commentators talked it up as the best thing they've ever seen in netball for a long, long time. What did you make of the chairlift and the way it changed the game in that last quarter in particular?
It was really interesting. I was watching the game from up in the stands, and I actually didn't see it myself. I thought Anna had actually jumped that high because I know she can. Look, it was fantastic. What a great tactic to play in that last quarter, particularly when the Vixens were coming home so strongly. And I think, you know, all credit to Debbie and the players and the coaching team.
And it's obviously created a bit of a stir, whether it's within the spirit of the game, but it's definitely within the rules and well within their rights to do. So I guess the challenge now is for opposition teams to either try out the tactic themselves, but also think of ways to get around it.
Well, certainly the Mystics have shown their hand a little bit, and perhaps the Silver Ferns have shown their hand a little bit. So I think we've got some good tactics in place for that. Certainly a quick offload pass to catch them napping while they're up in the air is the way to go, I think, and get that shot off very quickly.
Absolutely, and we will not underestimate the skill and athleticism it takes to do that. Not just anyone is going to be able to pull that move off. So,
absolutely amazing.
Incredibly well done by the Mystics there. Great stuff, and it was a huge win for them, and it's the second, as I mentioned, the second loss in a row for the Vixens after they started off on fire for the first half of the season. So interesting couple of weeks coming up for the Vixens. Our second game we're going to look at is the Firebirds, who got over the Steel by just 1 goal. It was a bit of a great escape, really. I mean, the game was very, very tight the entire way through, and the Firebirds just got up in the end.
Look, a great performance by the Firebirds. To win in Invercargill is just so difficult. And also just coping with the cold as well. They're in Brisbane and they're having to come down to that, you know, different environment. So look, all the plaudits to the Firebirds for getting over the line. And obviously Romelda and Nat Medhurst, you know, really pulled it home in the end for the Firebirds.
And the Steel actually did have their opportunities towards the end of their match there, and their goaling lineup with Wilkins and Brown have really caused some problems for defensive lineups over this season. And the Firebirds' defence line probably just found it a little challenging over there at times, didn't they?
Oh, definitely. Would have found it challenging. We have to be able to adjust our defensive one-on-one work. It has to be much more in front. And, you know, that does take a little bit of adjustment for the players. So certainly, you know, very well done. also the ball has to be stopped a little bit earlier than when it gets into the circle.
Absolutely, and Alyssa McLeod obviously coming out of that match with a little bit of a worrying ankle injury probably put some pressure on their defensive lineup because she has been really strong through that mid-court this year. The next game we're going to look at is the big upset of the round, the Pulse getting over the Thunderbirds by just 1 goal. Who would have thought ninth on the ladder, playing first on the ladder, and the upset's there?
Look, it just goes to show the evenness of the competition, I think. Pulse have probably been underachieving a little bit. They've been very close but haven't quite got there. But certainly they're very well drilled by Robin Broughton, and she did pull the big change, which was to put Jolene Henry into the centre to really try and nullify Nat Von Berto's influence, but also to give that extra drive and connection with Caitlin Thwaites.
Yeah, and Caitlin obviously shooting 33 goals for the match, but it was kind of the most complete team performance we've seen from the Pulse this season.
Oh, certainly was, and they settled their lineup as well, which is terrific. So, Jolene Henry, I think, provided a lot more drive for them and surety of possession. And she certainly feeds Caitlin extremely well. She puts the ball in, basically, threads the needle. So well done to the Pulse and also to Robin Broughton.
Yeah, and again, the Thunderbirds missing their chance to consolidate the top spot on the ladder. So what we will do now is have a look at the league ladder and see where everyone is placed after round 8. As we look at the Thunderbirds still sitting on top of the ladder, but just by percentage now. And you can see the grouping at the top, 3 teams sitting on the same number of wins. The Thunderbirds, the Vixens and the Mystics at the top, with the Swifts rounding out 4th position. Of course, still Magic and Firebirds really pushing their way for that top 4 position. And the other teams still not that far away on that ladder. Now, Lisa, we'll head into our performance of the week, obviously, as we do, and I cannot go past really pumping up this chairlift, as it's been called, or the lift, from Anna Harrison and her defensive teammates, I will have to mention, and the Mystics. What an incredible spectacle it was to see. Had the shock value, had the incredible amount of athleticism, as I mentioned before, and it really was a game turner for me. So for me, Anna Harrison, again, I seem to keep mentioning her, but she was my performance of the week. What about you, Lisa?
Look, I'm going to go for the Pulse, actually. Beating the top team, Adelaide, and really breaking through, I think, was a superb performance, and I will give that the performance of the week.
It's now time to preview all the action that we've got coming up in round 9 of the ANZ Championship. First of all, the Fever are taking on the Firebirds at home in Perth, the first time they've been home for a number of weeks. The Vixens, second on the ladder, taking on the Swifts, 4th on the ladder on Sunday in Melbourne, which will be a great match. The Mystics versus the Tactics on Sunday in Auckland, and rounding out the matches for round 9, Steel versus Pulse in Dunedin, of course, with the Thunderbirds, and the Magic sitting on a bye for the week. So Lisa, each week Dan and I go up against each other in our weekly tipping competition. It's a little bit tight this season, and you've got Dan's tips for us. Do you want to run through them?
Yes, these are not my tips, these are Dan's tips. Fever, Vixens, Mystics and Pulse.
Okay, well thanks for that. We are actually sitting on even numbers for the tipping round for the season, so it is tight, as I said. I'm actually going for a few different, the Firebirds, the Vixens, the Mystics and the Steel to get up in a tight one, I think, over the Pulse. Well, that's all we've got time for today's show. Make sure you follow the ANZ Championship on Facebook and Twitter for all your updates, and also the 10 Sport Netball website and Sky Sports for all your video analysis and all things netball. Also, San Remo Fantasy Netball is on there too. And of course, check out your local guides for the broadcast details for the upcoming round of matches. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. It's been very, very interesting.
It certainly has. That's all we've got time for on Centre Pass. See you next week. Centre Pass would like to thank our principal sponsor,
Associate sponsors,
support sponsors and suppliers,
and our broadcast partners.